If you are a PA or an NP and you want to learn about the best way to work abroad, then this video is for you. Hi, it's Michelle with the Medicine Couch, and this is one of my very favorite topics. I would love to live and work overseas, and I think that currently the absolute best way for PAs and NPs to do that is to work with the U.S. State Department, staffing the medical clinics in U.S. embassies all around the world. There are over 100 U.S. embassies that have these medical clinics, so there is a need for lots of providers, and these embassies are located in a variety of places, from kind of remote, austere locations all across the spectrum up to working and living in large cities like London, Berlin, and Tokyo. And one of the great things about this opportunity is that you don't have to have some kind of crazy trauma or huge emergency medicine experience. They're really looking for people who have great family practice experience. So that is good news and opens this opportunity up to a lot more people. Of course, this job can be great for people who are single, but it's also great for people who have families. You would be surprised at all of the things that the State Department provides and the ways that they make it easy for you to transition into these different posts, bringing a family with you. And beyond that, the U.S. government does offer a lot of great benefits when you work for the State Department. So I was lucky enough to interview two PAs and one NP via Zoom who are currently working at U.S. embassies around the world. They're stationed in Frankfurt, Beirut, and Berlin. In those individual interviews, they go into depth about their experiences and the things that they love about what they do, what the job entails, and all the things that have to do with the family experience of moving to different embassies. I will be having those individual interviews on my channel at a later date. But right now, I wanted to start by making an overview video for you to introduce you to this opportunity and answer some of those more common questions about logistics and how this all works. Now, if this topic really fascinates you and you want to hear those individual interviews, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you get told when I release videos so you don't miss it when those interviews come out. Now, let's hear about this opportunity, find out what the job entails, what qualifications you need, what the perks and benefits are, and how the logistics really work of moving your family overseas. Would you tell us what you professionally love about this job?
What I've loved about it is actually being able to work as a real primary care provider. So I get to know my patients. I spend time with them. I listen to them. They trust me. There were times when it was difficult. I'm not going to lie to you, especially if somebody gets really sick in a place where the healthcare is not that great. And you're thinking, okay, I need to get this person out as quickly as possible.
Definitely just the experience of having a new job every 2 to 3 years and actually experiencing new cultures. And it's more than just the social culture side of it, it's the medicine culture as well. You will go to a post where you'll see diseases that you read about in textbooks in school, never thought you would see in person. And then after a while, you're like, oh yeah, that's that zebra. I know what that disease is. And you have seen it, you've actually treated it. And there's never a dull moment. This is probably, I have to say, I mean, after 18 years, I am not bored. And I'm sure if I stay another 10 years, I will still not be bored because this job constantly challenges you. It pushes you in directions you never thought you would go in. You'll do things that you never thought you'd ever do as a PA. One of the beauties of this job is we get to spend time with our patients, which is harder to do in private practice these days. But if you have a complicated patient, a new onset diabetic or an acute chest pain, you can spend as long as you want with that patient. You can spend hours if you have to. And that luxury is something that I just don't take for granted.
What specifically does the job entail when you're working as a PA or an NP at a U.S. embassy?
We care for everybody who lives and works at an embassy or consulate, anybody who is on official orders that is coming to visit, whether it's the president, the vice president, the secretary of state, members of Congress, we provide their care as well. Interestingly enough, we don't provide healthcare to tourists, to American citizens that have come to a specific country. We will work with American Citizen Services. We will provide wise counsel, but we are not able to care for those individuals.
We also do occupational health. So that's for every local employee hired by the embassy. We take care of their occupational health needs. We have chauffeurs, of course, in the motor pool who drive official vehicles. So we're responsible for making sure that they're up to date on their driver's physical, that they've been checked, they're okay. A lot of education, we have a lot of patient education events.
Yeah, so actually, I would say the majority of our job is not seeing patients. You might spend 50% of your time seeing patients, but there's a lot of administrative work. For example, we go to country team, which is usually a meeting that the ambassador holds with core section heads. We do policy with the Ministry of Public Health sometimes, and as we work with USAID, which is kind of a development team. And to work with Peace Corps, we do trainings. A lot of us are doing CPR trainings. We do mass casualty trainings. And then we also just work on a lot of just kind of logistics. For example, PCR testing for COVID, right? We have to get diplomats in and out of the embassy. So we're always liaisoning with the Ministry of Public Health to make sure that we can figure out, okay, what are the current requirements? So we do a little bit of everything.
Give us kind of an idea of what the clinic setup is like and how many patients you're seeing every day.
I've never worked any place that I worked alone. All of the places had one or two nurses and an admin person that helped with sort of reception function and things like that.
I would say for most of the posts that the medical providers practice at, which would be your nurse practitioners and PAs, there's no other physician. You have remote supervision by a physician who might be 1,000 miles away. So there's some posts I've been at where we've seen as many as 20 patients a day. And then there's embassies like Beirut, for example, where I see 2 patients a day. So it really varies on how many people there. Now, Beirut I have 1 nurse and 1 laboratory technologist, whereas in, like Addis Ababa, where I was seeing 15 patients a day, I actually had a family physician who actually worked with me, who I hired on the economy to help out with the patient load. And then also I had 4 nurses.
Okay, so it depends on where you are. We have the posts that actually are bigger, and we call them co-located posts. So those posts usually would have a doctor, a medical doctor, you, the nurse practitioner, a PA. You would have nurses. Sometimes lab technicians are also there. Sometimes a psychiatrist is also there. But the unique thing about the doctor and the psychiatrist is that they're always traveling. So they cover a region. You, the PA or the MP, you're in control. So you get to manage day-to-day administration as well as see patients. So you're in control of your schedule. You plan your day, but if something pops up, there's always someone you can delegate to and go take care of what is immediate. So yeah, I remember the days of private practice where every 15 minutes someone's knocking on your door, you got to go to the next room. You don't have that.
What is the patient population? Are they all adults, or do you see people all across the age spectrum?
Every post is different. So, for example, in Beirut, all I see is adult patients. And as Afghanistan, all I saw is adult patients. But when I was in Ethiopia, I saw a lot of pregnant women, a lot of children. And so your practice changes depending on what environment you're in. And you really have to be prepared for any of those environments.
We typically don't have a geriatric population because the retirement age is 65.
And to give people an idea of what kind of opportunities you have to live around the world, can you tell us where you have served so far in the State Department?
First full State Department job was in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. And from Tashkent, we went to Ankara, Turkey. And then from Ankara, Turkey, we went to Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. And then from Santo Domingo, we went to Maputo, Mozambique. And then after Mozambique, I like to jokingly say I had to do a hardship tour. And so they sent me back to Washington, D.C., where I was the deputy director in the Office of Medical Clearances. After my Washington, D.C. tour, I went to Tel Aviv, Israel. And then from Tel Aviv, I went to be the clinical director of medevac operations in Pretoria, South Africa. And then I went to Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And then after Phnom Penh to Frankfurt, Germany is where we're at. And I will bid this summer, and who knows where the adventure will continue to.
Started in Nigeria, Abuja. And then from there, we went to Mauritania. And then we went back to DC. DC, we went back to Africa again. This time we went to Angola. And then from Angola to Berlin. So this is our first European tour. And it would have been greater if not for COVID. Yeah. But it is nice.
So my specific position, I'm actually a rover based out of Geneva, Switzerland, which is where my wife is currently stationed. And I pretty much cover posts around the world. So anybody who has a gap. So after I left Afghanistan, I went back to DC for 2 weeks of orientation. And then I went to Pretoria, South Africa to help run the Medevac Center for 3 months. And then after that, I came here for 4 months. And then after this, I'll be going to Yaoundé, Cameroon, and to Niamey, Niger. And I will be probably just continuing to travel every 6 months to every 2 months at a new post. If you really want to kind of see as many posts as possible and kind of check that box of visiting more places, there's no job like the rover position because you can visit 12 countries in 1 year and actually live and work there. And so that part's amazing. In Washington, we actually have quite a few leadership positions that are for our MPs. And so some are like director of all the med specialists. We have some that run medical clearances, which is kind of our clearances process for getting people overseas. We have a medical provider who's actually over the program for anomalous health incidents, which you probably have heard of, like the Vanda syndrome, and also for a COVID response. So we have actually quite a few specialized MP positions back in Washington that people can serve at as well.
What are some of the really exciting things that you've got to do at the different posts?
When the president is in town, the State Department medical officer is a part of the motorcade. And I think it's one of those thrilling, exciting things, to meet up with Air Force One and to jump in the vehicle that's right behind the president and be whisking through town. And I think all of us, we're in it to take care of people. And sometimes taking care of those people involves some of the leaders of the free world. And it's really exciting.
I think one of the most exciting things, like I said, I'm a people person. So I've met people from, I have so many friends now, let me put it that way. So you get to also experience the country where you're in, experience the culture, and the travel opportunities are amazing. I've been to places where I never dreamed that I would ever go in my life. So I cherish that.
Every post has presented some kind of unique adventure or something different. I'm really partial to Southern Africa. I have done 3 tours in Africa. My favorite was Harare, Zimbabwe. While we lived there, actually, we had a Land Cruiser that we'd pack up full of gear and we'd go into the African bush and actually do our own safaris. That was pretty surreal. And then living in Cambodia was amazing. My family learned to scuba dive there. There were some beautiful, pristine beaches on the Gulf of Thailand that we went to. Seeing the old temples up in Angkor Wat in the northern part of the country. There was just a lot to see and a lot to do up there. And then, the other extreme of that was London. We lived downtown and like I said, we had contacts with 100 different providers that we used for our medevac center. And it was kind of a high adrenaline place where, you never knew what air ambulance was coming in or what post was going to be calling you from around the world and bringing somebody in. And you would go round on patients in the same hospitals where the royal family was being taken care of. Every experience has been fantastic and just different in its own unique way.
How long is each post? Are they standard or do they vary in length?
A place where there's a high danger pay, it's a 1-year assignment. Places that are not as remote, not as austere or dangerous, they are 2-year assignments. Probably the majority of places are 3-year assignments.
Now, this is a really big question I'm sure many people have is, do you get a say in where you're posted?
When you are ready to bid on an assignment, they will send you a list of all of the countries that are available to bid on. There are places that the officers are moving on to other assignments, or there are new places that are coming online. And so that list can be as long as 30 or 40 positions that you can bid on. And you're asked to rank high, medium, and low 6 assignments. You can put in more than that, but at a minimum of 6 assignments. Whatever of the list that you put on, you have to be ready to go to. And so you'll send in your minimum 6, and then the State Department will tell you which one of those 6 they're going to send you to. And this is a unique thing about this job is that you're not going by yourself, you're going with your family. I know when I get my bid list, the whole family scours over it and everybody has their choice of which countries they would like to go to. And so it's sort of a United Nations in my house where we sit together and decide on, okay, what is going to be our top 6 bid list.
I know in the interviews, sometimes it was mentioned working in an austere environment or a hardship tour. Give us a little bit more information about that. Like, how austere are we talking?
Honestly, we're very well taken care of. We have very good housing in the best parts of town, because we want to make sure that it's safe. So when we say hardship, it's just maybe the infrastructure. It's not similar to what you have in the US. But you would always have running water. You'd always have electricity. If the electricity grid is off, you have backup generators. So it's not bad in terms of where you live, how you get things, you are taken care of. So the austerity that we're talking about is more the infrastructure and the living conditions of the average person. But it's totally manageable, totally tolerable. In fact, some people like going to those places because they feel like they can make more of an impact because you have a lot of volunteer opportunities in the community.
What are some of the logistics about moving overseas, finding housing, and raising your children overseas? And how do your kids feel about this opportunity?
The State Department has their own housing pool, and when you are assigned to a location, they will send you a housing questionnaire, and they'll say, "Tell us what your needs are about your housing." There is a housing board committee at every embassy, and they look through the information and they try to match up employees with close to what they want as possible. This is for the whole family, and it's just not mom and dad; it's the kids as well. My 3 kids have grown up in the Foreign Service. They all speak multiple languages. It's really a wonderful opportunity, and kids learn so much overseas. They are exposed to a great diversity of culture. Every posting that I am at, I do community service, whether it's an orphanage or providing healthcare or clothing to refugees. And my kids were there with me. They helped me in providing support and care for men, women, and children that have been in really tough situations. And so that gives them a greater exposure to the things that are happening around the world.
So childcare was my number one concern because my children were very little. I mean, they were not even really barely school age. And once I got to my first assignment, I realized it wasn't a problem at all. It's actually a lot easier to get childcare overseas. It's more manageable, it's more affordable. And so a lot of this nannies that post, they've been doing the same thing over and over again. So it was just a question of me getting comfortable with leaving my children. Over the years, I have 2, one high schooler, 2 middle schoolers, and 1 elementary. They have such a broad view of the world. For them, this is all they know. So everywhere they go, they look forward to it, making new friends. And I think for them, it's a lot easier because you have social media and they've used it in a positive way. They can stay in touch with some of the friends that they made over the years. So it's been fantastic for them. They've always gone to international schools. It's the language of instruction is English, of course, but they're different people from different parts of the world all congregate there. So they have that in common with the people who attend those schools. And they've also had the opportunity to learn languages.
And while it's easier to go overseas as a single person, I wonder if that's challenging, if it becomes kind of isolating, and if people might feel alone if they don't have a family. Does the State Department address that at all or have any programs for that?
Hey, this is important too, because the State Department, they're there to help support single officers as well. And so the community liaison officer, they really work to help sort of link up singles with other singles so that you don't feel that you're, the third wheel with others that have families, and nor are you sort of left all by yourself. And so every embassy that I've been at, they've had a very healthy sort of singles group as well. They have groups that will go off and do, hiking or do tours of museums or other historical places together. Sometimes I'm kind of jealous because they get to go to some of the better parties.
Now, how does the salary compare working for the State Department versus being a PA or an NP back in the States? And also, what kind of benefits come along with this job?
So the housing is a part of our package. The houses come furnished. We don't pay rent. We don't pay for the utilities, although we have to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars.
The fantastic thing is also we get the holidays, the local holidays and the American holidays. The basic salary is not bad at all. And then you factor in when you arrive at your post, you're not paying for housing. You're not paying for utilities. If you have kids up till 12th grade, they get to go to private schools, some of the best schools in the world, in my opinion. So you're not paying for all of that. When you add all that up, it's a lot.
I love to sell this part of the State Department because it's certainly what recruited me. When you join the State Department, there's a chance it may not be the same salary you're making in the private sector. But the Foreign Service is like the military, where we kind of go on ranks. And so as you get promoted, your salary goes up. So you're not fixed at a fixed salary for your whole career. You actually get step increases every month or every year. People at the upper end of our salary scale, so the ones who've been in for a long time, who've kind of reached the top ranks, are actually making quite a bit more than most nurse practitioner PAs would be in the field. And the perks are many. We have free housing, education for your children, educational tickets for your college-age kids to come visit you. We get free continuing education, and of course, the best thing is you get to travel around the world. So you get most posts, you get an R&R where you actually get a regional rest break to go travel to either the U.S. or to any place else in the world you want to visit. And it's the State Department has its own kind of support network, not unlike the military does for those of us who are serving overseas. So yeah, so there are many perks and many things I'm sure I've forgotten that do add up. We have a pension, which is something that you just don't see in the healthcare sector anymore. And we also have a very generous TSP, which is like a 401k plan.
Unfortunately, in the past, there have been a few embassies that have been targeted for terrorist attacks. And also, there are embassies in some countries that I would imagine are not overly friendly to Americans. How do you feel about that? Do you feel safe working at embassies? And is this something that people should really be concerned about?
When folks come to every embassy and consulate around the world, they're given a security briefing and they're told, okay, these are the risks, these are the hazards, these are the things that you need to be aware of and how to keep yourself safe. I loved Pretoria. I loved South Africa. But if you read in the news, you think that people are mugged the second that they get off of the airplane. And yes, if you get into sections of Pretoria or sections of Johannesburg, yeah, bad things can happen to you, but bad things can happen to you in Washington, D.C. and other cities around the United States. And so we use our common sense. We maintain our situational awareness. And if a mission finds itself truly being targeted where we think something really, really bad is going to happen, then we have those conversations about, do we need to draw down a mission? Do we need to ask our family members and loved ones to go home and wait there until times are safe? Bad things can happen any place around the world, but the State Department, the embassy really does go out of its way to try to keep its employees and family members as safe as possible.
No, because we have drills all the time. We go over emergency procedures. That's one of the things we also do, because that's one of your domain as the medical provider is to get prepared in case of an emergency. So we do those drills over and over again based on what the local condition is. We have our meetings, the high-level meetings. There is a report back to Washington, D.C. to decide, is it safe for us to be there or do we need to get people out of there? So if anything, I believe the United States Embassy is one of the safest embassies in the world.
So as a State Department employee, we're probably safer than anybody else. Even in Beirut, for example, I have a bodyguard that follows me around everywhere I go. Now, most American tourists here don't have that, but as a diplomat, they want to make sure that we're safe. And so we drive around in armored vehicles with a bodyguard. So it's unusual, Beirut special, because most posts you don't have bodyguards following you everywhere you go. But most of our posts, especially our SEER posts, you do have guards at your house to guard your house. So the State Department is very cautious about making sure that their employees are safe and kept out of harm's way.
What kind of medical experience do you think is important for PAs and NPs to have who want to do this job?
I think that my time on the Navajo Indian Reservation was really helpful for me. It allowed me to work in somewhat of a remote and austere location, seeing a wide variety of family practice and pediatric patients. And knowing that I didn't have a center of medical excellence right around the corner, but it was a helicopter ride away. And that's sort of what really set me up and prepared me well for work in the Foreign Service.
Primary care experience. You need to have done a little bit of everything. You must be comfortable with seeing children. Basic knowledge of just, what the care of a pregnant woman involves is also good. And I think more importantly, you have to have an open mind. It has to be something that you want to do. You can't be scared. You can't have a closed mind like, okay, so I'm only going to see adults. I don't want to see kids. I don't want to see psych patients because guess what? You will. Demographics that I've mentioned, you're going to see them and you're going to see them more than once. So you have to have an open mind, but it helps if you've had primary care experience. Of course, we have some people who have also done a little bit of emergency care. That also comes in handy when you have your emergencies. But primary care is basically what you need, and an open mind.
We tell people when we interview them, you have to be flexible and you have to be resourceful. You will be put in environments where you'll have very few resources. Think of it kind of, going to some very rural town in Alaska, and all of a sudden you're the only person there. And that's kind of replicated times multiple places where we send people. And flexibility. You go to places that you was your dream and you wanted to go there, and there'll be other times you'll be posting places that you didn't want to go to, but you have an obligation to serve. And so you have to be flexible, and you have to be willing to work in places you don't necessarily want to work, although sometimes those posts turn out to be the most fun. It's also a challenge changing new posts. You're essentially changing jobs every 2 to 3 years, which means you're meeting new people. Now, if you're staying long enough, you'll keep running into those same people. The State Department's not that big. But you will also find that you are constantly having to reinvent yourself. Every new post you go to, they don't know you, they don't know your clinical ability, they don't know you socially. And so you have to kind of get used to starting over again. And I would say for those people who work in small towns, they would definitely understand this, but it's working in a bubble. You really are working with your patients, who are also your friends, who also maybe your supervisors, who may be your employees, and that takes some adjustment. Interestingly, we hire a lot of people from small towns, kind of jack of all trades type of positions. So we really are looking for people who practice creative great medicine. So we're looking for people who see children, who see pregnant women. We don't have geriatrics in the Foreign Service because there's a 65-year mandatory retirement, but we do occasionally get family members who are 80 in the Foreign Service. But geriatric medicine definitely will not be the biggest part of your practice here. We're looking for people especially that have done procedures and are comfortable working in an isolated environment by themselves with no real support.
And what about specific requirements for PAs and NPs? Are there any required certifications or procedures that people need to know how to do? And are there any age restrictions on this job?
You need to have 5 years of primary care experience. That includes pediatrics, OBGYN, family practice, acute care. If you have some emergency room experience, that's helpful as well. But truly, the day in and day out job is taking care of the routine family practice needs of the community. There are some foundational things. You need to be able to start an IV. You need to be able to perform a phlebotomy. You need to be able to suture. You need to be able to say, I am competent in an advanced airway, whether that's an LMA or an endotracheal tube, what have you, some way for securing an airway. You have to be able to complete 2 full tours. So I believe you have to be younger than 57 or 58 to join the State Department, because then you have to be able to complete 2 full tours. And the State Department still has a maximum age limit. You tick out at 65. So at 65, there is mandatory retirement.
But we recommend some sort of trauma certification, but if you don't have it within the first year of your being in the State Department, there are courses that are organized for new intakes. I remember when I first came in, I had to go to Minnesota, University of Minnesota, to take a course on trauma and get certified. So, and throughout your career, you always have the opportunity to do that.
The only thing that's mandatory right now is ACLS and BLS for providers. We don't do PALS currently, but it's been a discussion. One thing that's kind of up and coming, and we're actually providing the training for our staff, but we really want people to have this when they come in, is to be able to do fast ultrasounds. A lot of our health units actually have ultrasound units in them, and the expectation is you know how to use it and at least be able to do a preliminary exam on somebody.
So overall, have you enjoyed working for the State Department? And what kind of words of encouragement or advice would you give to those who are interested in pursuing this opportunity?
I think every country, every post that I've been assigned to, there's a piece of history that has occurred at each of those locations. And so I think for all of us who work in the State Department, you are not only witness to history, but you're helping in making history as well. And so that also makes the job really, really special.
It's been great. I mean, there's no post that I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy. You know, they all have things that endeared me to those places. I would say if you've been thinking about it, just do it. Go for it. It's a great opportunity. Wonderful people to work with.
Definitely, I think just applying a USA job, there's positions that open and close periodically. And the other thing is I'd recommend people apply, reapply, because we do have people sometimes who don't get in the first time, get the experience that they say you need, and just reapply. Persistence does help. Working for a large entity like the State Department can take some getting used to. Things move very slowly. It's a giant bureaucracy. And the experience people go through applying and joining the State Department is very similar to how it is being in the State Department. But I would say that by far, Med itself is very small. We're a very small group within a larger bureaucracy, so we try to take care of each other. But I think the rewards far outweigh the negatives of working for the State Department. I've been doing this a long time, and I can't imagine doing anything else right now.
I think this opportunity is so fascinating, and there's so much more that was covered in the individual interviews. When I get done with them, they're going to be posted in the Cool Unusual Jobs playlist on my main channel page, and I'll put the link to that here. If you would like to work overseas but not sure if this is quite the right opportunity, I did make a video listing what I think are the top 5 ways to work abroad for PAs and NPs, and that video will be linked here as well. Thanks for joining me today. Take care, stay sane, and I'll see you next time on the Medicine Couch. Bye.